The morning sunlight filtered through the kitchen blinds, casting golden stripes across the worn linoleum floor of our modest three-bedroom house on Maple Street. This had been our home for nearly 5 years now, ever since the divorce and my decision to start fresh with Tyler in Whispering Pines. The neighborhood had seemed perfect then, quiet streets lined with similar houses, a good school within walking distance, and a community pool where Tyler, my 11-year-old son, could spend his summers. I watched him now, hunched over his cereal bowl, his dark hair falling across his forehead as he concentrated on the back of the cereal box. His science project was due today, a volcano we had spent the weekend perfecting. The dining table still bore the stains of our enthusiastic experimentation with red food coloring. "Dad, do you think Ms. Peterson will give me extra credit for the light-up lava?" Tyler looked up, milk dripping from his spoon. "She would be crazy not to. That volcano is engineering genius," I said, ruffling his hair as I passed. "Finish up or we will be late." The Whispering Pines Homeowners Association had seemed like a small price to pay for the security and amenities the neighborhood offered. The monthly fee was not insignificant on my construction manager's salary, but the well-maintained parks and community spaces made it worthwhile for Tyler. At least, that is what I told myself when the first violation notice appeared on our door 3 months after moving in. It was for grass that exceeded the maximum allowed height by half an inch. The second notice came 2 weeks later: improper storage of garbage bins, visible from the street for more than 24 hours after collection. Then came warnings about unapproved holiday decorations, incorrect mailbox paint shade, and a basketball hoop that apparently violated aesthetic guidelines. I learned quickly that behind these notices stood Patricia Wilkins, known throughout the neighborhood simply as Karen. She had been HOA president for 7 consecutive years, running unopposed after the first challenger mysteriously found himself facing 15 violation notices in a single month. My first direct encounter with her came on a Saturday afternoon, as I installed a small bird feeder in our front yard maple tree. She appeared at the edge of my property like a mirage in pressed khakis and a polo shirt embroidered with the HOA logo. "Mr. Reynolds, I see you are making alterations to the community landscape." Her voice carried across the lawn, sweet as artificial sweetener and just as chemical. I turned, bird feeder in hand, just hanging a feeder for my son's birdwatching project. Section 7, Paragraph 3 of the Community Guidelines clearly states that all exterior additions, including bird feeders, require written approval from the Architectural Committee. She smiled, but her eyes remained cold. "The form requires 3 business days for processing. I will leave one in your mailbox." I wanted to argue, but noticed how she was already making notes on her clipboard. Something about her demeanor suggested this was not a battle worth fighting. Not yet, anyway. "Thank you for the information," I managed to say civilly. As she walked away, I caught her studying our house with the calculating gaze of a predator assessing weakness. Her focus lingered on the slightly faded trim around the windows, the small crack in the concrete pathway, details so minor I had barely noticed them myself. That night at dinner, I mentioned the incident to Tyler, trying to keep my tone light. "She sounds like the evil queen from your books," he said, pushing peas around his plate. "Just someone who takes rules very seriously," I corrected, though privately I agreed with his assessment. What I did not tell him was how other neighbors had begun warning me in hushed tones about crossing Karen, how Mr. Abernathy had his shed demolished after a dispute over its color, how the Garcia family mysteriously lost their pool privileges for an entire summer after questioning association finances at a meeting. I did not yet understand that in Whispering Pines, Karen was not merely enforcing rules. She was building an empire of fear, brick by brick, violation by violation. And the first cracks in our peaceful life were already beginning to show. The violations accumulated like storm clouds on the horizon. Each week brought new notices, each more trivial than the last. The hedges were 2 inches too tall. The garden hose was visible from the street. The American flag we displayed was an inch larger than regulation size. I dutifully corrected each infraction, swallowing my growing frustration for the sake of peace. It was during the 3rd month that I first encountered Karen's enforcer. I was repainting our mailbox to the exact shade of whispering pine green specified in the HOA guidelines when a shadow fell across my work. Looking up, I found myself facing a broad-shouldered man with close-cropped gray hair and the rigid posture of former military. "Ms. Wilkins asked me to inspect your correction of violation number 47, he stated without introduction. "I am Raymond Thornton, HOA compliance officer." His tone made it clear this was not a courtesy visit but an inspection. He scrutinized my work with exaggerated care, running a finger along the mailbox post as if checking for dust. "The shade appears approximately 0.3 gradients lighter than specified." He pulled out a color swatch card and held it against the still wet paint. "This will need to be redone. You have 24 hours before a second violation is recorded." I stood, paintbrush still dripping. "Are you serious? I bought this directly from the hardware store using the HOA color code." "Perhaps you should have confirmed the batch number with the committee first." His smile never reached his eyes. "Ms. Wilkins is very particular about consistency." That evening, as Tyler practiced pitching in the backyard, I noticed Raymond standing at the edge of our property, taking photographs of our fence with a digital camera. When Tyler's ball accidentally rolled near him, Raymond picked it up, studied it with distaste, then dropped it deliberately into the mud before walking away. "Dad, who is that man?" Tyler asked, retrieving his dirty ball. "Just someone who works for the HOA, I explained, trying to keep the tension from my voice. "Best to give him space when he is around." The true nature of the situation became clearer the following week. Tyler came home from playing basketball at the community court, his expression troubled. "That man from the HOA told me I was bouncing the ball too loudly," he said, dropping his basketball in the hallway. "He said he would confiscate it next time." "Did he touch you?" I asked, immediately alert. "No, but he stood really close and took pictures of me and my friends. Said we were causing excessive wear on the court surface." I filed a complaint with the HOA board the next day, requesting that HOA employees maintain appropriate distance from minors and refrain from photographing children without parental consent. The response came 3 days later, a form letter explaining that the compliance officer had full authority to document violations wherever they occurred. The monthly community meeting became my next attempt at reasonable resolution. The recreation center meeting room was half filled with residents, most looking as if they would rather be anywhere else. Karen presided from a raised table at the front, Raymond standing stoically behind her right shoulder like a royal guard. When the floor opened for community concerns, I raised my hand and was eventually acknowledged. "I would like to address concerns about the HOA compliance officer's interactions with children in the community," I began, standing so everyone could hear me clearly. "There have been multiple incidents of intimidation and unauthorized photography that many parents find concerning." Karen's pleasant expression never wavered. "Mr. Reynolds, the compliance officer performs essential documentation of rule violations. Perhaps if your son followed community guidelines, there would be no need for intervention. My son is 11 years old, I responded, feeling heat rise in my face. He has been threatened with confiscation of personal property and made to feel unsafe in his own neighborhood. If I may, Raymond stepped forward. The Reynolds boy has been observed on multiple occasions violating noise ordinances, court usage time limits, and proper equipment handling protocols. All documentation is standard procedure. I looked around the room for support, but saw only averted gazes. One woman near the back gave me a sympathetic look but quickly focused on her lap when Karen scanned the room. "We will take your concern under advisement," Karen concluded dismissively. Now, moving on to the proposed flower bed renovation for the south entrance. After the meeting, I tried approaching several neighbors who had nodded during my comments, but they quickly dispersed, avoiding conversation. Only one man, Harold Jenkins from 2 streets over, dared to speak to me in the parking lot. "You need to be careful," he whispered, pretending to search for his keys. "Last guy who complained about Raymond found his car windows smashed. Police report mysteriously disappeared. Karen has connections at City Hall, the police department, everywhere." He glanced nervously around. "Some of us are documenting things, but quietly. Just watch your back. And your boy." As I drove home, I noticed Raymond's truck following 3 car lengths behind. He turned off before my street, but the message was clear. The walls were closing in, and my attempts at reasonable solutions had only made us more visible targets in a game I was just beginning to understand. Saturday arrived with perfect spring weather, clear blue sky. Wise, gentle breeze, temperature hovering around 70 degrees. It was Community Park Day, an event Tyler had been looking forward to all week. The common area between Sycamore and Elm Streets would be filled with families, providing a rare opportunity for Tyler to play freely with other children without the constant shadow of HOA surveillance. "Can we go early to get the best spot?" Tyler asked, already dressed and bouncing with excitement at 7 in the morning. "The event does not start until 10, I reminded him, pouring his orange juice. "But we can head over at 9:30 to help set up if you want." His enthusiasm was infectious. In the weeks since our confrontation at the community meeting, Tyler had become increasingly hesitant to play outside alone. I had noticed him checking windows and scanning the street before venturing into our own backyard. The change in his behavior ignited a slow-burning anger in my chest that I struggled to contain. We arrived at the park to find several families already spreading blankets and setting up lawn chairs. Tyler spotted his friends from school near the play structure and raced off after securing my permission. I joined a group of parents organizing the potluck table, keeping one eye on the children as they organized an impromptu soccer game. The morning progressed pleasantly. I engaged in conversation with neighbors who seemed more relaxed away from the formal HOA setting. Several even quietly commiserated about recent violations they had received. "Tyler is looking much happier today," observed Martha Chen, whose daughter was in Tyler's class. "He has seemed so withdrawn lately at school pickup." I watched my son laughing as he chased the ball, his face flushed with excitement. This is good for him, for all the kids, really. Around noon, I noticed Karen making her entrance. She wore white linen pants and a turquoise blouse, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the breeze. She moved through the gathering like royalty, stopping to speak with select families while ignoring others completely. Raymond trailed several paces behind her, dressed incongruously in pressed khakis and a golf polo, a small metal badge pinned to his chest. In his hand, he carried a golf club, a putter he swung idly as he surveyed the gathering. I tensed but resolved to maintain distance. This was Tyler's day, and I would not allow their presence to ruin it. The incident happened so quickly that later I would struggle to reconstruct the exact sequence of events. The children's soccer game had migrated toward the northern edge of the common area, near a decorative flower bed that bordered Karen's property. Tyler had the ball, dribbling with surprising skill toward the makeshift goal. Raymond's voice cut through the children's laughter. "Stop immediately. That area is restricted." The children froze in confusion. Tyler, mid-run, stumbled to a halt, the ball rolling forward into the edge of the mulched flower bed, barely disturbing a single petal. I was already moving toward them when Raymond strode into the group of children, towering over them. "Who kicked that ball? That is a direct violation of Section 11, Paragraph 4. I am sorry," Tyler stammered, stepping forward. "It was an accident, I will get it." "Your father has been warned repeatedly about your disregard for community property," Raymond snarled, his face reddening. As Tyler reached for the ball, Raymond raised his putter. I thought he was gesturing with it until I saw the arc of its descent. The club connected with the side of Tyler's head with a sickening thud that seemed to silence every other sound in the park. Time fractured. I remember running, my vision tunneling to the small, crumpled form now lying motionless beside the flower bed. Blood spread through Tyler's dark hair, shockingly bright against his suddenly pale skin. Someone was screaming, perhaps several people. Karen stood frozen nearby, her hand half raised as if to stop what had already happened. I fell to my knees beside Tyler, terrified to move him but desperate to assess the damage. His eyelids fluttered, a low moan escaping his lips. Relief flooded me at this sign of consciousness, immediately replaced by cold rage as I looked up to see Raymond still standing there, the golf club dangling from his hand. "He was damaging community property," he stated flatly, as if this explained everything. What happened next remains foggy in my memory. Witnesses later told me it took 3 men to pull me away from Raymond. By then, someone had called an ambulance. The paramedics worked efficiently, securing Tyler's neck, applying pressure to the bleeding wound, speaking in calm, urgent tones about potential skull fractures and concussion protocols. I rode in the ambulance, holding Tyler's small hand as he drifted in and out of consciousness. His questions tore at my heart. "Am I in trouble, Dad?" he whispered during one lucid moment, R's mixing with the blood on his face. "No, buddy, you did nothing wrong," I assured him, my voice breaking. "Nothing at all." The emergency room was a blur of forms, questions, and endless waiting. The doctor finally emerged after what felt like hours. "Your son has a moderate concussion, a 3-inch laceration requiring 15 stitches, and a hairline fracture to the temporal bone," she explained, her expression grave. "He is stable now, but we will need to monitor him overnight for signs of intracranial pressure." "Will there be permanent damage?" I asked, the word catching in my throat. "With proper care and rest, children his age usually recover well from injuries like this, but the next 48 hours are critical." She led me to Tyler's room. He looked impossibly small in the hospital bed, his head partially wrapped in white bandages, an IV line running into his arm. A monitor beeped steadily beside him, tracking his vital signs. When he saw me, he tried to smile but winced instead. "The doctor says I am brave," he whispered. I took his hand, careful to avoid disturbing the pulse monitor clipped to his finger. "You are the bravest person I know." Later that night, as Tyler finally slept under the influence of pain medication, I stood at the window of his hospital room watching raindrops race down the glass. Something fundamental had shifted inside me. The father who had dutifully corrected HOA violations and sought reasonable solutions had died the moment that golf club struck my son. In his place stood someone else entirely, someone willing to cross lines I had never before contemplated. The fluorescent lights of the police station hummed overhead, casting a sickly pallor across the incident report form in front of me. 3 days had passed since Tyler was released from the hospital. The stitches pulled at his scalp whenever he smiled, which was rarely now. Nightmares woke him several times each night, his small body trembling as he described the recurring dream of the shadow man with the metal stick. "I need you to go through the sequence of events one more time, sir," Officer Daniels said, his pen hovering above his notepad. His expression suggested boredom rather than concern. "As I have stated 3 times already, Raymond Thornton, the HOA compliance officer, struck my 11-year-old son with a golf club, causing a concussion, skull fracture and laceration requiring 15 stitches," I repeated, struggling to keep my voice level. "There were at least 20 witnesses. And you say this was over a soccer ball in a flower bed?" His tone carried undisguised skepticism. "My son did not even touch the flowers. The ball rolled to the edge of the mulch." Officer Daniels made a noncommittal noise. "We have taken Mr. Thornton's statement as well. He claims he was gesturing with the club to indicate the restricted area when your son ran into it accidentally." "That is absurd. He swung it deliberately. Ask any of the parents who were there." "We are in the process of gathering statements," he replied, though his notepad remained conspicuously empty of witness names. "In the meantime, I should inform you that we have received a separate complaint about you assaulting Mr. Thornton after the incident." Heat rose in my face. He had just struck my child. I was restraining him from doing further harm. "Multiple witnesses describe you tackling and threatening Mr. Thornton." "Which witnesses?" I demanded. "The same ones who saw him attack my son." The interview concluded with vague assurances that they would look into the matter further. As I exited the police station, I noticed Karen's luxury SUV parked in the reserved spot labeled Chief of Police. A chill ran through me despite the warm spring air. The next 2 weeks became a blur of bureaucratic stonewalling. The police report was filed but classified as inconclusive due to conflicting witness statements. The hospital bills mounted emergency room, CT scans, neurological follow-ups, trauma counseling. My insurance covered only a portion, leaving thousands in out-of-pocket expenses. I attempted to address the issue through the HOA board, submitting a formal complaint with attached medical records. The response arrived in a crisp white envelope with the Whispering Pines letterhead. "After thorough review, the incident has been determined to be accidental in nature. The HOA and its representatives maintain no liability. Furthermore, your property remains in violation of Sections 4, 7, and 12 of the Community Guidelines. Please address these issues within 10 business days to avoid further penalties." The letter was signed by Karen, her elaborate signature taking up a third of the page. My next step was legal counsel. I scraped together the consultation fee and met with James Harrington, a personal injury attorney with an office in the neighboring town. "Frankly, Mr. Reynolds, this is going to be an uphill battle," he explained after reviewing my documents. "The HOA's insurance will fight this aggressively. They will claim your son was trespassing in a restricted area. They will highlight your altercation with their employee. And," he hesitated. "And what?" "The local courts tend to rule favorably for Whispering Pines HOA. Judge Carlton, who handles most civil cases in this district, serves on their architectural committee. Judge Pearson's wife is the HOA treasurer. So there is no legal recourse when a grown man assaults a child? I asked incredulously. I did not say that. But realistically, you are looking at 15 to 20,000 in legal fees before we even get to discovery, with no guarantee of success. He slid a fee schedule across the desk. I would need 10,000 as a retainer to start. At home, Tyler had become withdrawn and anxious. He refused to play outside, even in our fenced backyard. His teacher called to discuss his declining participation in class and new reluctance to attend physical education. The nightmares continued, sometimes twice in a single night. One evening, I found him sitting on his bed, staring at the soccer ball he had not touched since the incident. "Dad, are we bad people?" he asked quietly. "No, buddy, why would you think that? Mr. Thornton told the other kids that we do not belong here, that we are troublemakers." His voice trembled. "And the police did not do anything to him, so maybe he is right." I sat beside him, careful to avoid the side of his head still healing. "Listen to me. We have done nothing wrong. Sometimes grown-ups abuse their power and other grown-ups let them get away with it, but that does not make it right. Then why does it keep happening?" I had no answer that would make sense to an 11-year-old, or to myself, for that matter. The final blow came in the form of another letter, this one from the district attorney's office, declining to press charges against Raymond Thornton due to insufficient evidence and conflicting accounts of the incident. Attached was a notice informing me that they were considering charges against me for assault and battery based on my unprovoked attack on an HOA representative. That night, I stood at my kitchen window, watching Karen's silhouette move behind the curtains of her corner house. Raymond's truck was parked in her driveway again, as it had been frequently since the incident. I caught my reflection in the glass hollow-eyed, gaunt, a shadow of the man who had moved to this neighborhood believing in systems and rules and justice. The final rejection letter lay on the table behind me, its official seal gleaming under the kitchen light. Something broke inside me then, not my hope for justice, but my belief that justice could ever come through official channels. The transformation was subtle but complete, like a key turning in a lock, opening a door to a darker version of myself I had never acknowledged. The notebook started innocently enough. Black cover, college-ruled pages, the kind you can buy at any drugstore for $2. I labeled it Neighborhood Watch Notes in case anyone happened to see it. Inside, however, it became something else entirely, a meticulous record of Raymond Thornton's daily routines. "Dad, what are you writing?" Tyler asked one evening, peering over my shoulder at the kitchen table. "Just some work notes, buddy," I replied, casually closing the notebook. "How is the science homework coming along?" While Tyler attended school and therapy appointments, I began my research in earnest. The first phase was simple observation. Raymond left his house at precisely 6:45 each morning, returning briefly at 11:30 for lunch, then again at 4:15 unless he was performing inspections. Tuesdays and Thursdays he spent evenings at Karen's house, his truck remaining in her driveway until well after midnight. The local library provided public computers where searches could not be traced back to my home IP address. There I discovered that Raymond Thornton had been discharged from the military 15 years ago, not honorably as he claimed in his HOA biography, but under circumstances that had been carefully sealed. Further digging revealed 3 restraining orders from previous relationships and a dismissed assault charge in a county 80 miles north. Most illuminating was a small-town newspaper article from 4 years ago, detailing a civil suit against a homeowners association in Fairview Heights. The case involved an overzealous enforcement official who had allegedly broken a homeowner's arm during a dispute over holiday decorations. The case had been settled out of court, all records sealed. The HOA president quoted in the article, Patricia Wilkins Karen, who had apparently brought Raymond with her when she relocated to our community. My notebook filled with details, his gym schedule, his preference for the corner booth at Danny's Diner on Saturday mornings, his habitual walks through the east side of the neighborhood at dusk. I noted which neighbors he spoke with regularly and which houses he seemed to avoid. I documented his visitor patterns, his garbage disposal habits, the deliveries to his home. The second phase of my preparation involved physical readiness. I had always maintained decent shape, my construction work keeping me relatively strong, but now I approached fitness with renewed purpose. Before dawn, while Tyler still slept, I ran 5 miles through the neighborhood, memorizing every alley, cut-through, and blind spot. 3 nights a week after Tyler was asleep, I converted our garage into a makeshift gym, focusing on strength and quick, explosive movements. I registered for a self-defense course at the community college 2 towns over, where no one would recognize me. The instructor, a former martial arts competitor, emphasized using an opponent's momentum against them. I paid particular attention to her lessons on vulnerable points of the human body, joints especially. Always remember, the goal is to escape danger, not inflict unnecessary harm, she cautioned the class. I nodded along with the others while making mental notes about the precise angle needed to hyperextend a knee beyond its recovery point. The moral struggle came in quiet moments, driving Tyler to therapy, watching him sleep, seeing him flinch when a neighbor's golf bag clinked in the distance. Was I becoming the very thing I despised? A man willing to use violence to maintain control. The difference, I told myself, was justice versus power. Raymond had struck out of entitlement, out of a belief that his authority gave him the right to harm a child. My planning had a different purpose: protection, consequence, restoration of balance. I imagined conversations with my own father, dead now for 10 years. He had been a strictly moral man, a believer in systems and order. Sometimes the system fails, I whispered to his memory. What then? The final piece fell into place during the 3rd week of my surveillance. Every Wednesday evening, Karen held a private meeting with Raymond in the small office behind the community center. They arrived separately and left separately, usually spending approximately 1 hour reviewing compliance issues. My research suggested these meetings often preceded new waves of violation notices or enforcement actions. The community center had a seldom-used service entrance near the maintenance closet. The office had a single window facing the empty lot behind the building. The parking area was poorly lit, with a 3-minute gap in the security camera coverage when it automatically reset at 9:00 p.m. I created a detailed timeline, calculated distances, rehearsed movements. I acquired items that might be necessary: gloves, a small tactical flashlight, clothing that would not restrict movement but would obscure identification. The moral questions continued to plague me, especially when Tyler showed small signs of improvement. His therapist reported progress in processing the trauma. He had begun playing in the backyard again, though only when I was present. Was this path still necessary? Then came the letter from the HOA legal team, informing me that Tyler's medical incident had led to reconsideration of my family's compatibility with community standards. They were invoking a rarely used bylaw to begin eviction proceedings based on pattern of disruptive behavior threatening community harmony. They were not merely content with injuring my child and escaping consequence. Now they intended to take our home. That night I finalized my plan, committing every detail to memory before burning the notebook pages in our backyard grill. The time for deliberation had passed. Wednesday's meeting was 2 days away. I tucked Tyler into bed, reading an extra chapter of his favorite book. "Are things going to get better, Dad?" he asked sleepily. "Yes," I promised, smoothing his hair back from the healing scar. "Very soon." Wednesday arrived with a steady spring rain that had begun at dawn and showed no signs of relenting. Perfect weather for my purposes, fewer people outdoors, reduced visibility, sound dampened by the constant patter on rooftops and pavement. I maintained normal routines throughout the day, taking Tyler to school, attending my construction site job, picking him up for his therapy appointment. "You are quiet today, Dad," Tyler observed as we drove home from the therapist's office. "Just thinking about a project," I replied, forcing a smile. "Mrs. Garcia is going to stay with you tonight while I attend a work meeting. She is bringing pizza and that new space movie you wanted to see." "The one with the robots." His face brightened momentarily before doubt crept back in. "You never have meetings at night." "Special circumstance. Foundation problem on the Westridge project." The lie tasted bitter but necessary. "I will not be very late." Mrs. Garcia arrived at 6, genuine warmth in her greeting. One of the few neighbors who had reached out after the incident, bringing homemade meals and offering to watch Tyler when I needed to work. I suspected she had her own history with Karen and Raymond, though she never volunteered details. "Call me if he has any nightmares," I instructed, hugging Tyler tightly before leaving. "I love you, buddy." "Love you too, Dad." Something in his expression made me wonder if he sensed the significance of this particular goodbye. The rain intensified as I drove not toward any construction site, but to the empty office complex 3 blocks from the community center. I parked my truck in the deserted parking lot, where it would raise no suspicions, and changed clothes in the cab: dark jeans, black waterproof jacket, running shoes with excellent grip. Not suspicious enough to stand out, but practical for my needs. In my pocket, I carried nothing that could identify me: no phone, no wallet, no keys beyond the single truck key. At 8:30, I made my way through back streets to the community center, staying under tree cover where possible. Karen's SUV already occupied its reserved space near the front entrance. Raymond's truck was parked farther back, as was his habit, always positioned for quick exit, never boxed in. Professional paranoia that I was counting on. The service entrance yielded easily to the maintenance key I had copied months earlier for emergency access, to the community pool when Tyler had swim team practice. The hallway was dim, emergency lights casting long shadows across the industrial carpet. I moved silently toward the office at the back, where light spilled from beneath the closed door. Their voices carried clearly, Karen's cultured tones rising and falling as she detailed some new enforcement strategy, Raymond's deeper rumble acknowledging her instructions. I positioned myself in the alcove near the rear exit, where the hallway turned toward the parking lot. From here, I could see both the office door and the path to their vehicles, remaining invisible in the shadows. At precisely 9:00 p.m., the security camera at the corner of the building clicked, rotated, and froze for its nightly reset. Inside the office, chairs scraped against flooring, right on schedule. The door opened, spilling harsh fluorescent light into the hallway. Karen emerged first, designer raincoat draped over her arm despite the downpour outside. "Make sure the Abernathy violation is delivered tomorrow before 9, she was saying. "I want that fence down before the weekend. And check on the Reynolds situation. The attorney said the eviction notice should be ready by Friday." Raymond followed, nodding. "The kid is still jumpy. Saw him at therapy today. Father might be more cooperative now that they are facing eviction. The casual cruelty in his tone, the satisfaction in his voice as he discussed my son's trauma, it crystallized everything I had felt since that day at the park. I stepped from the shadows, positioning myself between them and the exit. "Good evening," I said quietly. They froze, Karen's hand flying to her throat, Raymond instinctively moving into a defensive stance. "Mr. Reynolds," Karen recovered quickly, her voice resuming its artificial sweetness. "This is a private meeting area. Members are not permitted without prior authorization." "I think we are beyond citing regulations, do not you?" I remained perfectly still, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "We need to discuss what happened to my son, and the coordinated cover-up that followed." Raymond stepped forward, his large frame attempting to intimidate. "You need to leave now, before this becomes a police matter." Like assaulting a child with a golf club should have been a police matter. I withdrew a folded paper from my jacket, copies of the sealed documents I had obtained, details of Raymond's discharge, the previous assault cases. Or perhaps like these should have been matters of public record when you hired an enforcer with a history of violence. Karen's expression shifted from annoyance to calculation. "Whatever you think you know is irrelevant. The matter is closed legally. Any harassment will only accelerate your eviction proceedings." "My son has nightmares every night," I continued as if she had not spoken. "He flinches at sudden movements. He is afraid to play outside. Tell me, was enforcing mulch boundaries worth traumatizing a child?" "The boy ran into my club while trespassing," Raymond growled, taking another step toward me. "Not my fault if he cannot watch where he is going." "We have witnesses who dispute that version of events," Karen added smoothly. "As the police report indicates, now please move aside." I remained motionless. "Witnesses you pressured. Police reports you influenced through your relationship with the chief. Hospital bills my family cannot afford, all because your enforcer cannot control his temper, and you cannot tolerate anyone questioning your authority." Raymond moved suddenly, closing the distance between us with surprising speed for a man his size. His hand shot out, gripping my jacket collar and slamming me against the wall. "You do not know when to quit," he snarled, his face inches from mine. "Just like your brat." The mention of Tyler ignited something primal inside me. I did not resist immediately, allowing him to push harder, to commit fully to his forward momentum. Then, in one fluid motion practiced countless times in my garage, I shifted my weight and turned slightly, using his own force against him. Raymond stumbled forward, off balance. Before he could recover, I executed the move I had rehearsed mentally 100 times. A precise strike to the side of his right knee, targeting the exact point where ligaments connect to bone. I used the heel of my boot, driving it with calculated force at the perfect angle. The sound was exactly as I had imagined it would be. A wet crack followed by a hollow pop that echoed in the empty hallway. Raymond's scream was immediate and primal as he collapsed to the floor, his leg bent at an angle nature never intended. Karen's shriek joined his, her perfectly manicured hands flying to her mouth, eyes wide with shock and horror. For perhaps the first time since she had appointed herself neighborhood ruler, Patricia Wilkins was utterly speechless. Raymond writhed on the floor, hands clutching his devastated knee. The damage was catastrophic: torn ligaments, shattered kneecap, ruptured tendons. No quick recovery, no physical therapy fix. The kind of injury that permanently alters a life. "He attacked me," I said calmly, stepping back. "Multiple witnesses will confirm that, just as they did when my son was assaulted. How fascinating to find yourself on the other side of a broken system. Rain continued to drum against the windows, washing away any sounds that might have carried beyond the building. The security camera remained frozen in its reset cycle. Karen stood rooted in place, her power evaporating as she watched her enforcer incapacitated on the industrial carpet, his expensive golf slacks slowly darkening with blood where bone had torn through skin. "You cannot do this," she finally whispered, but the authority had drained from her voice. "You will go to prison." "Perhaps," I acknowledged. "But unlike you, I am willing to face consequences for my actions. The question is, are you? Because right now, there are documents being delivered to every board member detailing your financial mismanagement of HOA funds, your relationship with Raymond, and the systematic intimidation of homeowners." Her face drained of color. "You are bluffing. The same way you bluffed about having witnesses against my son. The difference is, I have actual evidence." I stepped toward the exit, pausing beside her. A fair investigation might reveal who truly belongs in prison. Now you have a choice to make: get your enforcer medical attention and face the consequences of your actions, or continue this war you started. Choose carefully. I walked out into the rain, not running, not hiding. Water soaked through my jacket as I made my way steadily back to the office complex where my truck waited. Behind me, I could still hear Raymond's agonized screams mixing with Karen's increasingly hysterical attempts to use her cell phone with trembling hands. The rain washed over me, cleansing in its way. I had crossed a line, become someone I never expected to be. Yet beneath the gravity of what I had done lay a bedrock certainty. Some injuries can never be compensated with money or apologies. Some violations demand more primal forms of justice. Dawn broke clear after the night of rain, sunlight striking the puddles in my driveway as I prepared breakfast for Tyler. I moved methodically, flipping pancakes, squeezing orange juice, acting as if it were any ordinary morning. Inside, I was preparing myself for inevitable consequences. "You seem different, Dad," Tyler observed, studying me over his glass of juice. "Different how?" I asked, setting a plate of pancakes shaped like dinosaurs in front of him. "I do not know," he tilted his head, "less worried maybe." The police cruisers arrived at 10 o'clock, 2 officers approaching my door with solemn purpose. I had already arranged for Mrs. Garcia to take Tyler to the Science Museum, sparing him the trauma of watching his father being questioned. But the questions were not what I expected. "Mr. Reynolds, we need to discuss some allegations regarding Patricia Wilkins and the Whispering Pines HOA. Officer Mendez began, her tone professional but notably different from previous interactions. "Several board members have come forward with documentation of financial irregularities and potential misconduct." 2 days later, the community newsletter announced an emergency election for HOA leadership follow. Patricia Wilkins' unexpected resignation. Her luxury SUV disappeared from her driveway overnight. Raymond Thornton was hospitalized with what was officially described as injuries sustained in a fall, though rumors spread quickly about the actual circumstances. Most surprising was the sudden appearance of neighbors on my doorstep, first one, then 3, then a dozen each with stories of their own. Mr. Abernathy with his demolished shed, the Garcia family with their revoked pool privileges, Mrs. Chandler whose therapy dog had been banned despite medical documentation, all victims of Karen's regime, all silenced until now. "We should have spoken up sooner," Harold Jenkins said, clasping my hand on my front porch 3 weeks after the confrontation. "What happened to your boy was the last straw for many of us." Legal proceedings followed, of course. The investigation into Raymond's assault on Tyler was reopened with new witness statements suddenly available. Karen's financial misappropriation of HOA funds became the focus of both civil and criminal inquiries. My own actions that rainy night remained a complicated matter. Raymond claimed he fell awkwardly during our confrontation, his pride apparently preventing him from admitting the truth even as he attended physical therapy sessions 3 times weekly. Tyler gradually returned to himself. The nightmares became less frequent, then rare. He began playing outside again, first in our yard, then cautiously at the community park. His scar faded to a thin silver line partially hidden by his hair. 6 months later, we stood together at the edge of the newly renovated community playground, watching children climb and laugh under the autumn sun. Tyler squeezed my hand. "Are we okay now, Dad?" he asked. I looked down at him, then across at our neighborhood, imperfect but healing just like us. "Yes, buddy, we are okay." Some wounds never fully heal. The slight limp in Raymond's walk when he finally moved away. The way Tyler still occasionally touched the scar on his head when nervous. The knowledge within me of what I was capable of doing when pushed beyond certain boundaries. But some victories are worth the scars they leave behind. My son played freely now in a community where power no longer corrupted so openly. And if there was a cost to that freedom, I had paid it willingly, without regret.